Hello, students. I'm going to explain phrases and clauses. As I mentioned in our previous meeting, phrases can consist of one or more words. We have noun phrase that we're going to see with NP, verb phrase that we're going to see them with VP, adjective phrase with AP, adverb phrase that is adv.p, and prepositional phrase that is PP. What are their characteristics? They consist of one or more words. For example, in this adjective phrase, I have very beautiful. We have a modifier and the adjective. Or one word like pretty, in this case, that we have only one word and it's an adjective phrase. They can be identified if we substitute them or we move them. For example, in this case, we have my parents, which is the noun phrase, and I can substitute them by they. And here we have Mary built the house. Mary is a noun phrase, and it can be moved by the sentence, the house was built by Mary again here. And again, the house is a noun phrase and can be moved as well. In this case, they are acting in a different syntactic role in the sentence, but the noun phrase is moved. The meaning is the same. As I mentioned before, they can act as subjects and objects. For example, Mario, in this case, is a subject and it's a noun phrase. Kiss Mary, which is acting as an object. How are we going to know the type of phrase we are dealing with? Because of their form or a structure that will come from the word class that that the word is in. For example, a verb phrase will consist of a verb. A noun phrase will consist of a noun, and so on. The syntactic role that they have in a sentence or in a clause, for example, whether they are a subject, an object, or a modifier, and the meaning of the overall clause and of the noun phrase. Okay, in noun phrases, we know that the head must be a noun or a pronoun. They can have modifiers like pretty girl or determiners. For example, an apple. A is a determiner, an is a determiner, and apple is the noun. In pretty girl, we have the modifier would be pretty, and girl is the noun. And they can act as subjects in a clause and objects. Verb phrases, they are very easy to identify because they are the most important part in a clause or a sentence. Of course, the head of the verb phrase can be a main verb, she likes him, or can be an auxiliary verb and a main verb. For example, she's walking there. We have the auxiliary verb that is, and the main verb walking. Adjective phrases, of course, the head is an adjective. They can have modifier like very pretty, very beautiful, and they can act as modifier of nouns like pretty girl, or they can act as predicative following a verb. An adverb phrase, the head is an adverb. They can have modifiers like so soon, and they can act as modifiers of verbs. They go there. Prepositional phrases, we have the head, which is a preposition, and it must be followed by a noun phrase. For example, I go to school. To school is a prepositional phrase. To, the preposition, a school, a noun phrase. They can act as adverbials in a sentence or as modifiers. Which are the clause elements that we're going to find in clauses? A verb phrase. This is the most important one and the easiest to identify. A subject, an object, which can be a direct object or an indirect object. a predicative, which can be subject predicative when we are talking about the subject of a sentence, or object predicative if we are going to talk about the object of a sentence. And adverbials. These clause elements will help us understand the clause patterns. Which are the clause patterns? We have to know that clause patterns depends on the verb and the type of verb that it is inside the clause. For example, if we have a clause pattern which is SV, subject verb, we are going to have an intransitive verb, run, disappeared, for example. If we are going to have SVO, we're going to have a subject, a verb, and a direct object. These are monotransitive verbs. If we're going to have SVC, it's a subject, a verb, and a subject complement. And we're going to have a copular verb. For example, she is pretty. If we're going to have SVA, we have a subject, a verb, and an adverbial. And again, a copular verb. For example, she is late. If we are going to have the pattern SVOO, we are going to have a subject, a verb, a direct object, and an indirect object. And the type of verb is going to be a ditransitive verb. If we have an SVOC, we're going to have a subject, a verb, a direct object, and a complement of the object. And these type of verbs are complex transitive. If we are going to have the pattern SVOA, we have a subject, a verb, a direct object, and an adverbial. And again, it's a complex transitive verb. Let's see them in detail. The SV pattern, as I mentioned before, is made up of an intransitive verb, right? For example, run. So we have they run would be an SV pattern because we have they, a noun phrase. We can say Mary and John, for example, and it still be a noun phrase, run, okay, which is a verb phrase. So we have subject, verb, an SV pattern. Let's find the pen. Right, an SV pattern because we have a subject and a verb. And this verb is intransitive. Good. Let's see SVO. We have, they made a cake, right? We have they, which is a noun phrase. It can be Mary and John, which is acting as a subject. So we have S, right? Then we have made, which is monotransitive verb in this case, okay? It's acting as a verb phrase and it's a verb, so we have S and V. And a cake, in this case, a is a determiner, cake is a noun, so this would be a noun phrase. And it's acting as a direct object, okay? So we have SVO. Then we have SVC, right? She, which is a noun phrase and is acting as a subject, S, is, which is a copular verb and is acting as a verb phrase, or is a verb phrase, sorry, and is acting in the verb position. So we have SB, and pretty, which is a complement of the subject, right? Because we are talking about she, Mary, Anna, Peter, all right? So this would be a subject complement, SVC. Then we have the pattern SVA, right? She, again, a noun phrase acting as a subject position, S, is, which is a copular verb and is the verb phrase of this clause, V, and then in bed, which in bed we have a preposition, a noun phrase, or a noun, which is a prepositional phrase and is acting as an adverbial. But this adverbial is modifying the subject, right? Because we are talking about she, Anna, Mary, anybody. So we have S, B, A. Then we have SBOO, they, which is a noun phrase acting as subject, S. Made, as I mentioned before, is a ditransitive verb, which is acting as a verb phrase, and it's the verb be. Mary, which is a noun phrase and is acting as a direct object, O. And a cake, which is a determiner, cake, a noun, is a noun phrase acting as an indirect object. So we have S, B, O, O. In this case, SVOC, we have I declare her a genius. Sorry, I didn't realize that I wasn't reading the sentences. I, noun phrase, which is a subject. Declare, which is a verb, right? Her, which is a noun phrase again, and is acting as a direct object. A genius. A determiner, genius, in this case is a noun, so it's a noun phrase acting as a complement of the object, right? Wait, a complement of the object, because we are talking, right, a genius about her, about the direct object. Right? So it's a complement of the object. We have SBOC. Then we have SBOA, which the sentence is, I sent the letter to Mary. And we have I, a noun phrase acting as a subject, send, a verb phrase, which is the SB, we have SB. The letter, we have here an article or the determiner, and letter, that is a noun phrase acting as a direct object, right? To Mary. To, preposition, Mary, noun phrase, so it's a prepositional phrase acting as an adverbial of the object because the letter was sent, right, to Mary. Okay, but the letter is the direct object. So we have SBOA. Okay, and this is the end. Yes, this is the end of my presentation. I hope it's clear enough. If you have any doubts, please let me know.